Hi, welcome everybody to today's weekly webinar, Fire Up Creativity with AI. I'm your host for this afternoon session, Al Briggs. I'm one of the customer success managers in our education team here at Adobe.
Thank you for joining this weekly webinar series from the ANZ Adobe Education Team. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we gather and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We honour the wisdom, knowledge and artistic expressions that Indigenous communities have shared with the world. Their contributions to the arts and education continue to inspire and enrich our lives. Through creativity and education, we strive to build a future where all voices are heard and celebrated. Whether you're just getting started or looking to deepen your skills, these sessions aim to provide hands-on tips, classroom examples, and expert insights to help teachers make the most of Adobe's powerful creativity tools. If you would like to workshop along with the presenter, we encourage you to use two screens or two devices, one to view the presentation and the other to access the software. This avoids constantly flicking between windows. If you do miss any content, note that you can always refer back to the recording. Please use the chat feature to ask questions or share comments, and most importantly, make the most of this professional learning opportunity from Adobe. Now it's over to the Adobe Education Team.
Okay, so today, what are we going to be looking at? What are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about safe, ethical, and transparent artificial intelligence use in education. We're going to have a little bit of a chat about how Firefly and Express support responsible creativity, looking at things like safe technology for schools, content credentials, and the C2PA initiative. We're going to identify classroom-ready applications for ideation, prototyping, and media literacy. And we're going to apply Firefly in a quick creative challenge to take back to your students. And that's how we'll be finishing up the session. So, as Tim said right at the top of the session, if you've got any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat as we go. I'm more than happy to be interrupted in my flow. There's no preciousness on it from my side of things. So if you have questions at the time, I'm more than happy to answer them as they come rather than necessarily waiting right until the very end. So if we start at the start, the big picture, we're hitting a critical time. Last week, I was at a conference of over a dozen higher education institutions within Australia. And I think the key takeaway is that we are hitting an absolute critical point in education at all levels about what we do next. What do we do with this tool that we call generative AI? And why is safety and ethics such a critical component of that? So we know that generative AI is transforming classrooms from that idea generation process all the way through to assessment design. It's opening doors to creativity, to personalization and accessibility like never before. But it's also introducing a significant number of new risks, things like misinformation, built-in biases, and ethical dilemmas. So as educators, it's our role not to just use these tools, but to teach students how to use them in that thoughtful, safe, and responsible manner. So today, what we're going to be really looking at is trying to find that sweet spot where creativity can thrive without compromising safety or ethics. So Adobe has taken a unique path with Firefly, which is our generative AI engine built into all of our tools, and Adobe Express. First and foremost, I think the key there is that the content that goes into that system has been trained on only Adobe licensed stock and public domain and openly licensed content. So what that means is that anything that we're creating in there or that we're using as a source for our creation, we've already got the rights to go in and use. So we're not going in and using other people's materials. We're not going in and using other people's intellectual property. And what that means is that as both educators and students, you can be safe and rest assured knowing that anything that you create using Adobe Firefly, either in Firefly itself or within Adobe Express, is not going to be infringing on anybody's intellectual property. We've worked very hard, and Dr. Tim has been the key driver in this, at getting Adobe products, including Adobe Express, to be qualified as part of the Safer Technologies for Schools product badge program in 2023. We also have built into our software something called Content Credentials. And what this is Adobe sort of describes it as like a digital food label, like you'd have on the packaging for food, that goes in and gives you a sort of a list of the ingredients. For this, it's a list of the ways that AI has potentially been used inside of that design. And it's a way of being really clear and transparent about the nature of it. So rather than going in and sort of hiding where AI has been used, it's being very upfront. And I think that's going to be the key component. And again, this is something that we're finding across all education levels. So whether it be K-12 or the TAFE space or into higher education or even postgrad, an idea of using a tool, think about it in the same way that you would if you were going in and referencing an article. You're just referencing another tool. You're referencing the fact that you used Adobe Firefly, for example, to come up with an image of a castle, medieval castle in the pouring rain near a forest on a dark and stormy night. Yeah, and that's really just going in and making it very clear where that information came from. You're being transparent in the same way that you would if you were doing a standard Harvard referencing for a significant number of articles that you've gone in and referred to in a paper. And the content credentials is tied in with something called the Content Authenticity Initiative, and Tim has the link for that, so that can get shared in the chat. But the Content Authenticity Initiative was an initiative that was kicked off by Adobe in 2019, and the idea there was that these credentials would become part of a digital workflow so that everybody can go in and see them. If you are a LinkedIn user, you may start to see this little icon that you can see on the right-hand side of my screen, that little CR, that's the Content Credentials logo. It is becoming more and more common for websites and media to be going in and including this. And it just means that you can actually go in and click on that little CR icon inside of an image and see what has been done with that image from a digital perspective. And the C2PA is the body that sort of sits alongside that. It's the global standard that ensures that this provenance information can be recognised across all platforms. So I think that the thing to just keep in mind really, and the main takeaway from this, is that idea of it being not just commercially safe, but safe for education. So bias-free, safe content. You cannot generate images in another artist's style. You can only create based on a prompt that is then taking a look at a data set that we have access and full rights over.
How can you really know where something was made, or even what it's made of? It's easy to tell with real-life things, but what about the content on our screens? Now more than ever, verified authenticity is critical, especially with the advent of AI. That's why a global community, including companies, organizations, and civic leaders, have come together in the Content Authenticity Initiative. The movement's goal is to promote universal adoption of content credentials, the open standard for content authenticity and provenance that can be attached to images, video and audio files, documents, and more. Think of it as a digital nutrition label. Camera and software companies are already including it in their products. You can choose to embed content credentials in your files and make it clear for people to review. You can interact with this icon to see the origin and edit history of the file. Content credentials can be stored in the cloud for added durability. The underlying technology implements the C2PA open standard, and the Content Authenticity Initiative is helping make it more widespread with free open source tools. On top of that, we're working with educators, policymakers, creators, and the industry to speed up the adoption of content transparency. Together, we can create a world with trust and transparency built into what we create, share, and see online.
All right, so basically everything I said, but in a much more succinct and pretty information graphic type sort of way. So thank you, Content Authenticity Initiative video, for clarifying what I was trying to get across. Content credentials, as we said, it's that idea of this metadata that goes in and attaches to an image. You can check this, the link that Dr. Tim has shared in the chat, the Content Authenticity org. There is a media that is the media literacy resources, and I'm just going to go in and quickly click on that so that you can actually see what it looks like. But when you click inside of that web page, you will see it takes you to Adobe's Education Exchange, which you may be familiar with with other components that you've been to. But you'll see that there's actually a lot of little special topics and things that you can go in and embed into your own curriculum and deliver to your students. So there's a lot of resources in there that you can go in and use. The other thing that I wanted to draw your attention to inside of the Content Authenticity Initiative is that you can actually check any image at all that you have. If you think that it's potentially been created using AI, you can go through this ecosystem tab, and you can go down to where it says verify, and you can drag in an image. And I'm just going to go in and quickly grab an image. Here's one I prepared earlier.
While you're getting that ready, there is a question from Roland, which is a fairly in-depth one. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to help, but when you're ready, I'll fire it to you. But yeah, keep going. Just tell us when you're ready.
Yep, no, good to go. So in what ways can CAI's cryptographically signed metadata be stripped or altered without breaking the asset's visual integrity, and how can these vulnerabilities be mitigated? So Roland, as with most of these sort of tools, anything that's metadata based, you need to do a fair bit of work to be able to go in and get rid of that. The key vulnerability, as with anything digital, is that you can screen record things. You can go in and you can copy things really quite easily. What we are hoping for, and what we've sort of encouraged, is the idea that this is an opt-in model at the moment. This is not a mandatory model. So if you go into Photoshop, for example, you can go in and turn on your content credentials. So you can go in, and that will go in and do things like track all of the changes. What have you done to the file? How have you edited it? What has actually been done within the image? Because it is metadata, there are ways to go in and strip it. And so you're always, as you would all well be aware, when you're going in and you're creating a tech tool, there are always people out there trying to go in and find ways to get sort of around the use of that tool. But really what it comes down to is that this is designed to be something that we are trying very, very strongly to support institutions, to support companies, to support designers, to be going in and looking at this model. And Roland's now said, I've heard there's a concept called durable content credentials. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing, is that what you're finding is that it's actually going to be in the source code of the image. But again, there are always going to be ways to sort of look at trying to get around that. I think the key is just keep in mind what we're trying to do with the Content Authenticity Initiative, which is, number one, raising awareness, and number two, focusing on the safe and responsible use of these tools. So it's not about trying to hide where it's come from. It's about trying to go in and make sure that we are being very, very transparent in this whole process.
And thanks to Erin Raithke, who's also thrown in some information from the Content Authenticity site / how it works. So if you're interested in more, she's put in that link and some information about that. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron. Okay, so you can see just from this one, this was an image that I'd created earlier today in Adobe Firefly. And when I bring it in, it's going in and telling me it was used in Adobe Firefly, it was created, tells me when it was created. So it's essentially just that metadata that would be in a normal image, but it's also including that AI information. If I had gone in and edited that image inside of Photoshop, you would see a list of actions under there where it went in and said what else had been done to the file. And so this is, my background before joining Adobe is I was a higher education educator. I taught graphic design for over 20 years. And one of the things that we always like to go in and see is what we would call our students' working files. So how they actually got to the end result, because it was just as important to go in and see their process as it was to see their final outcome. And this is a fantastic way to go in and see that. So if you need to go in and have that assessment, you can go in and see, what have people done with the files? How have they gone in and worked? It's essentially sort of like long division for design. Okay, I'm going to jump back into my presentation. And if we go to the next page, and again, I'm just going to go back into my full screen present mode. Hopefully you guys can see that. So AI accelerates, obviously, the way that we can go in and create content. So misinformation is spreading so much faster than it ever used to be able to. And that authenticity piece really matters. It really matters because students, when they're in that K-12 space, a significant number of students, when you take a look at the majority of students are looking at AI as being a form of cheating. And so by the time they're getting to that higher education space, where we're now struggling with the questions of how do you use AI tools in a safe and responsible way, it's a case of really retraining the kids coming through to be critical of, but not necessarily dismissive of, technologies like Gen AI. So teaching students to question where information's coming from is absolutely critical. And it's giving them skills for life. It's giving them the ability to go in and analyze, verify, and interpret media. Hope we can also cover or mention the Adobe Content Authenticity. Roland has said, yeah, and the content authenticity, this is exactly what we're sort of talking about in today's session, Roland. Yeah. So teaching responsibility.
Sorry, Alice. It's worth mentioning that Adobe was one of the founding partners of the Content Authenticity Initiative. So the Content Authenticity Initiative is not an Adobe thing, even though we founded it. It's actually got many companies involved. I think it's now over 3,000 companies involved, but there was about 4 or 5 that originally founded it, and Adobe was one of them.
Yep, absolutely. And so what we're really sort of coming back to here is the idea that as educators, we're all having to play that key role in modelling and guiding these habits. And it's very much a case of we are what students are witnessing when it comes to these tools. The way that we go in and use them, the way that we go in and model that use is what they're going to be going in and learning from. If you take a look at every single university across Australia is currently reworking their strategic plans for the next 5 years, sort of essentially through to 2030. And if you compare them to the strategic plans up to 2025, which barely rated a mention for anything sort of tech, or particularly in the Gen AI space, they are all so much more focused on that now. And so I think it's important knowing that universities are moving at light speed in this space, which means that the students that you're training, if you are in that K-12 setting, you are going to need to be helping to prepare these students for this future world of university, which is going to be a lot more adaptable, a lot more customizable, and a lot more independent and supportive of individual student learning needs. And I think Gen AI plays a really key role inside of that. So Firefly, as we said, is the tool that is built in to our tools. It used to be called Adobe Sensei for anybody who's an old school Photoshop user. If you ever went in and did a content aware fill tool or something like that back in the day, where you went in and selected an area of an image and deleted it and had it try and fill by sampling pixels from all around it, that's essentially where it came from. And Adobe Sensei was a wonderful tool and was built into a lot of our products. And its first emergence was in the early 2000s in a tool called Adobe Acrobat, where you could go in and hit the tab key on your keyboard and it would automatically recognize form fields where you needed to go in and fill in fields on a form. So anytime you've ever gone and hit the tab key in Acrobat and you've gone from filling in your first name to your surname to your date of birth, was Adobe Sensei back before we called it generative AI. That was generative AI working in the back end. So Firefly is built into all of Adobe's products now. There are stronger integrations in some, and I think what you'll be finding over the next couple of years is that that will be a lot more significant. So you'll find that those tools are built in a lot more often. Where are they? Where do you find Firefly? You can find Firefly directly on Firefly webpage, which is just firefly.adobe.com. It's a great place to go to if you want to experience all of the bits and pieces that you can do inside of Firefly. Some of those features are geo-restricted, so they do a lot of beta testing for products primarily in the US. So you might see some things that pop up saying coming soon. At the moment in education, the idea of text to video is not available inside of the education space yet, but that is coming very soon. You'll also find Firefly, obviously, inside of Creative Cloud apps like Illustrator, InDesign, Lightroom, Photoshop. So Photoshop now, when you go in and you make a selection, you'll actually have a permanent little window that pops up that allows you to go in and create generative AI content. So that might be including additional content inside of an image, or it might be removing content. In Lightroom, you can go in and do the same thing. In InDesign, you can go in and use text prompts to go in and either generate images directly inside of InDesign or even come up with layout ideas. And in Illustrator, you can do things like customizing color. You can recolor images. You can go in and you can create SVGs, so scalable vector graphics. You can create those vector graphics just using prompts, so just from a text prompt. But you can also go in and do things like create patterns. So if you work in a fashion area, for example, and you have to do yardage where you have to go in and do patterns that are going across, a whole bunch of different garments. The process used to be really laborious back in the day to go in and you had to create your original graphic and then go in and make it into a pattern and then go and work out what your replication and your steps and your distances and all those sorts of things were. Now it's literally you can go in and create it from a text command. And so you'll find it's really being embedded across a lot of our tools. Where you will probably be using it the most in an education context is directly within Express. And inside of Express, when you go to your media tabs, when you're going in and introducing or creating images, you've also got the ability to go in and generate your own content. And that can be things like generating a complete image. It can be things like removing backgrounds from images, adding content or deleting content directly from an image. So if you want to go in and add in a hat onto a person, or if you want to go in and remove a distraction that's sitting on the side of the image, you've got all of these amazing abilities that are built in. You've even got the ability inside of a piece of software called Premiere Pro for any of the professional video auteurs out there that will go in and generatively extend the end of a video. And you can generate up to 5 seconds of footage in a video just using generative AI. So that means that if you've got footage and you've cut it short, you haven't given yourself enough additional space to go in and have the lead out for the shot, you can go in and create that using generative AI. It's a pretty remarkable space. And I think the thing that we're finding is that a year ago, it was very much about creating fantastic looking images using generative AI. This year, the focus is very much on video. So I don't really know what we're going to see in 2026, but I'm sure it's going to be something pretty special because that technology is just moving at such a fast rate. To go in and try and stay on top of it is obviously a really difficult process for everybody. If we just jump to the next slide. As far as prompting goes, so how do you prompt? How do you get the best out of a tool like Firefly? Look, I think the thing to keep in mind is that every generative AI model works in a slightly different way. For Firefly, you have a maximum limit of 175 words when you're going in and creating a prompt. Obviously, the more descriptive that you can be with your prompt, the better the outcome is going to be. The more the way that you go in and prompt matters, essentially. the recommendation is to only include 3 main subjects. And the reason that we say only 3 main subjects is you can always go in and continue to edit or continue to add to these images inside of software such as Photoshop or even in Adobe Express. So try and keep it simple. I mean, 175 words is not necessarily simple, but try and keep that prompting to a couple of things. So you can see here, the example prompt that's sitting under this cup of tea is handcrafted ceramic teacup on a linen-covered table with soft morning window light, steam rising in delicate swirls, styled with eucalyptus leaves and artisanal balance, quiet luxury. And so it's taking each of those elements and looking at existing examples of images of teacups or of linen or of soft morning window light through keyword searches and things inside of Adobe stock to go in and compose this particular image.
Hey, Al, I think we need to talk to the Adobe stock team about eucalyptus leaves.
Yeah, I think we possibly do. They are a little rounded, and that's okay, Tim. That's okay, because what it's showing is the limits of this technology. There's still no substitute for going in and framing an image yourself. If you really wanted to go in and grab some eucalyptus leaves and shoot this, please feel free to go in and do so. There's nothing like quite going in and doing that original process. But I guess that's the thing that you'll find when you go in and prompt. You could put this same prompt in. Everybody in this room could go in and put the same prompt into Firefly, and you will get different outcomes for each person. You will never get the same outcome twice. And so there is that little bit of random. And I think so long as you're aware that you need to pass that critical eye, a la Tim coming in and saying, yeah, they're not eucalyptus leaves. You need to realise that what you are creating is something that is not coming from a human perspective. It is coming from a completely data-driven model that is just going in and pulling out words and then seeing what that looks like together. So this is sort of almost, I think you could say at this stage, it's quite complicated and it's quite advanced, but it's essentially digital finger painting where it's going in and it's sort of putting these elements together in an interesting sort of way. One of the things that works really well is vivid details and concrete language, giving more predictable results. Poetic abstract wording, such as your quiet luxury, artisanal balance, can produce surprising results. And a lot of this comes down to the idea of the keywords that are listed for an image. So when you're going in and asking it to be abstract, sometimes it can be way off grid and really quite spectacularly strange. But the great thing about it is that you can actually see how that model is working as you go in and use these prompts over time. As you get to the next version, so at the moment we're on version 4 of the Firefly engine. As that engine advances, you'll see it does a lot of things a lot better. So the idea of the abstract language is very much coming through on a really nice. So yeah, there's a great prompt in there from Roland, Upper Realistic. Yeah, so you can go in and have those style references, all those sorts of elements. Commas are a great way to go in and separate each of your descriptors. And there's a sort of an essential formula that you can go in and follow, which is style, subject, action, environment, and props. Or if you are a fan of an acronym, it's STICE. So the style, it's a drawing. It's a hyper-realistic photo. It's a painterless style painting of a cat. What's the cat doing? It's sleeping on a couch. Where is it? It's inside a log cabin. What else is going on? It's next to a fireplace. And that ordering tends to give you the best outcomes. It's not to say that you need to have all of those elements in there, but that is ideally the best order. If you then go in and finish off your prompt with additional things, you know, it might be lighting conditions, it might be different stylistic prompts. So if you're actually going inside of Firefly, you've got the ability to choose art styles, or if you wanted hyper-realistic or photorealistic, or in a particular sort of school of design style, you can go in and include those prompts as well. And so if you think about where you could go in and use that in an education context, and I'm happy to go in and share this as a resource afterwards, think about that idea of blooms, where you've got remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. And I'm not going to read through every single piece of this because that would take us the next 25 minutes. But it's that idea of the fact that you can use Adobe Firefly and generative AI for that ideation, for that brainstorming and that prototyping. So rather than students sitting there, and in the design industry, we used to call it white pixel fever, where you're staring at a blank screen and getting really anxious about what you're going to be filling the screen with. It's the same thing with paper and pencil. It's the same thing when kids are going in and having to try and come up with ideas. Giving tools that can assist with that starting point can be incredibly useful. Roland said in the chat, it's also a great way for students to learn or relearn art appreciation, because the more they know styles, then they can be more creative. Look, absolutely. I think it's fantastic. I think, you know, there's a real, I think when generative AI imaging was really first sort of kicking off a couple of years ago, everything was in that sort of steampunk tradition. You saw a lot of owls wearing top hats with pocket watches and cogs and things going on in the background, and, you know, blue and green lighting everywhere. And it was very, very cool. And it all looked very, very Gen AI. And it actually had a really distinct feel to it. And I think you're starting to find that more now as well, where it comes into those particular sort of art styles. So there's a real movement at the moment when you take a look at a lot of content has that, for those who are old enough to remember, that sort of 80s, 90s vibe, where there's a lot of fluoro colors. And it's a very Gen Z thing. But a lot of that sort of almost DIY sort of aesthetic, where there's little bits and pieces all over the screen. That style is really coming back into popularity. But coming back to this actual slide, yeah, that idea of remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Really fantastic when you can go in and you can have a tool that will accompany a student and get them past any of those potential concerns that they've got, or fears about actually going in and creating, or worries about, oh, I'm not really a good artist. Everybody can create, and these tools can really just go in and really help us go in and get to those outcomes that we're really looking for. So we've got about sort of 10 minutes left in the session. And what I'd like you to do, if you are in the K-12 space, Dr. Tim's going to put a link into the chat, which will go in and give you a template that is available inside of Adobe Express, and it is actually a guided activity. If you are in the higher ed space, there is another prompt that's going to be shared inside of there. And what we're just going to do is have a little bit of a play inside of Adobe Express, go in and create something. And I'm going to go in and do the same thing. I'm going to go in and create one myself. So here's the image. If I'm in the higher ed space, here's the image for the K-12. And you'll see in the K-12, you've also got this fantastic little thing here that goes in and gives us a little breakdown of how to actually create it. And so this is something that you can use as educators, or you can also go in and share with your students, so that it's not just a case of you having to be a master of the tool to be able to go in and get your students going in and using it.
Yeah, Al, it's called a guided activity, and there's a little play button for K-12. When you hit the play button, there's a teacher who starts talking you through the process, the step-by-step process. It's really good. You can even pop out the video. You can have the video full screen, or pop it out so you can still see the template while it's playing. And if you look in the K-12 version of Express for the guided activities, there's a whole range of them.
And they really are absolutely brilliant, because they are updated on a really regular basis, and they do give you, if you are a purely visual learner, you can follow the video. If you would rather just go in and read all of those instructions, it's actually going through absolutely everything as you need to go in and create that. And if you click on each of those elements, for example, you can see it's going to pop up in a slightly larger format. So a really great way to go in and do it. What I'd like you to do, and if you're in the higher ed one, we'll jump into this one here. What you'll see is I've got an image here that has been generated using generative AI. And the reason I know that is that with that image selected, I've got my image panel sitting over here on the left that shows me what I can do to an image. And these are things like remove background, erase, remove object, insert object, generate image, set background, generate similar. Now, each of these, with the exception of set background, are generative AI features. You can see here that I've got a little circle with two arrows on it that sort of looks a little bit like a graphic equalizer. That lets me know that that feature has already been used. So if I click on this generate image option, you'll see I actually get the prompt popping up. And you can see that that prompt says create a vibrant, retro-inspired pop-art portrait of a, in brackets, girl, bold neon-coloured hair, styled in a, anything in brackets, I would recommend that you look at changing that. You do not have to go in and do this. You can go in and create your own prompt, but I would recommend just going in and changing this. So if we go in and say, I'm going to go in and I'm going to make it a boy. My son is sick at home upstairs, so I'm doing this in recognition of his unwellness. Bold neon coloured. Well, my eldest has actually got purple hair at the moment, so we'll go on and say purple.
Hey Al, it's interesting how it even picks up spelling mistakes. Like if you typed in a spelling mistake, it still interprets, like for some reason it spelt colour without a U. I don't know why it did that.
Yep. It would be, I imagine, because the original prompt came from US.
I'm being a little bit facetious there.
That's okay. That's okay. So where it's styled in a bob, well, my son doesn't have a bob. He's got curly hair. Wearing, we can say oversized sunglasses. We're wearing black rimmed glasses. Background should be bright, etc., etc. And so you can see here, I can also go in and I've got two options in there where I can go in and I can use a style reference and I can use a composition reference. And they're actually really important when you're wanting to go in and create interesting content that is very specific. So if you're doing a still life, for example, or if you're going in and you're staging a design and you want to have the person in the foreground right on the very left-hand side, you can go in and do that through a composition reference. You can go in and do a style reference. And so that's where you could go in and, take a photo of something out in the real world and say, I want it to look sort of something like this. But it's not going to be going in and stealing any of that intellectual property. So, if you go in and put in an image from a comic book or something like that, it's not going to go in and make it look exactly like that comic book. It'll go in and use the line shapes or the line styles, those sorts of things. But you'll see there under content type, you've got all of these different types. You've got auto, you've got photographic and art. And then under styles, you've got different techniques. So you can go in and choose. And you can really just change these up. You can go in and add multiple ones in. And, like I said, it's digital finger painting. You can have a bit of fun with it. When we click on generate, so based on those extra elements that I added in there, it's going to go in and you'll see a little spinny wheel. And as soon as you've gone in and generated that, you'll have 4 outputs to choose from. If you don't like what it's done, you can always go in and rework it. You'll see there, so we've got black rimmed glasses, kind of wavy hair, purple, and that's pretty good. A little bit happier than my son is at the moment. You'll notice I can go back in and edit that at any stage. I could go in and I could insert objects or I could remove objects. So if I wanted to go in and say remove object, I could go in and just click on the actual glasses, and I'm just painting out that glass frame. I'm just going to click on remove, and it's going to do its magic. It might work, it might not, but we'll see. In a couple of seconds. Come on, Magic Firefly. Nope, just went in and rechanged the glasses, right? And that's okay. But what we get to see is when you're going in and you're making these adjustments, when you're going in and you're inserting objects. So maybe I'll go in and put in a butterfly or something down here, or a frog, cartoon, frog, smiling. Fun likes frogs. Give it a second, give it a second. Any questions? We've got any questions? There we go. We've got our cartoon frog. Beautiful. He's sitting there. He's very happy. And again, I get 3 different options that I can go in and use. If I like it, we'll keep it. If I don't like it, I can discard it. Yeah. And Roland said in there, Express is only Firefly Model 3 at the moment. Yeah, that's right. So Firefly Model 4 is only available through Firefly at the moment. That's something that's going to be changing, obviously, as the model gets stronger and more developed. But at this stage, Model 3 is the one that you'll find in Express. And Model 3 actually works really well with concrete images, with solid, straightforward design elements.
Al, we might finish up soon if that's all right.
We are literally done. So
right,
just wanted to flag. Oh, sorry.
So go on, just before you play the final video, just hand it over to me for a couple of seconds if that's all right.
More than happy, Tim. So if you'd like to take over from here.
Sure, and then I'll get you to share that last closing video. Let me just share my screen for the moment because I've got a couple of things to announce. First of all, if you're not already familiar, we do have a resource that's particularly for K-12 teachers. And this is a site, and you can see the link, adobe.ly/ANZ-K12-PL. This goes to all of our K-12 related resources in one spot. And that QR code will get you there as well. So the weekly webinars that we're running at the moment are all advertised there. Tutorials that I've been creating on Adobe Express are there. Our ACE Level 1, 2 courses, our newsletter. And most importantly, what's also in there, if you scroll down onto that site, is the fact that we have just launched our new conference. And our conference is coming up on the 2nd of October, and this is for everyone in the Asia Pacific region. So Roland, get the word out to your Filipino colleagues and community, because we'd love to get as many people as involved in this conference as possible. You'll be able to pick your own adventure. At the moment, we've opened up registrations for the opening plenary session, which will be a little bit difficult for Filipino teachers because it's going to be about 9 o'clock in the morning our time, so it'll be quite early for you. But there's another plenary halfway through the day for those that can't make it to the first plenary. And then once we get all the workshops all worked out, you'll be able to pick and choose and register for the sessions that you would like to go to. So we've only really advertised the opening plenary registration just to get an idea of people who are interested in throwing in, and then we'll be able to connect with them. But you can find out more information through our Facebook group, and also I'll be pushing things out through my LinkedIn channel. But this website here, we'll be updating that regularly as the registrations come in and as the workshops come in. So folks, please encourage your networks to be involved in the Adobe Educators Conference for this year on Thursday, the 2nd of October. Thanks, Al. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to throw it back to you.
All right. So thank you very much for your time. As I said, we've got another weekly webinar coming up next week, so August the 20th, which is focused on video editing made easy with Adobe. And we're going to have 2 presenters for that one. We're going to have Dr. Tim and John Barry, and Molly will be moderating it. So if you have not yet registered, please make sure that you do. I'm going to play the outro video and thank you all for your time. Thanks again to Dr. Tim for all of the tech support on the back end. Have a wonderful rest of Wednesday and rest of week, and I will play you out to our outro video. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for being part of this webinar from the ANZ Adobe Education Team. While you complete the feedback form via this QR code or link, note that this weekly webinar series is just one of a range of free events and resources managed by the ANZ Adobe Education Team. More information is available on the ANZ Adobe for Education site via adobeanzedu.com. and more specifically for K-12 teachers via adobe.ly/ANZ-K12-PL. Thanks again for being involved in this webinar. We look forward to seeing you at the next event. Keep being creative.